You're listening to Radio Kidnappers, the voice of Hawke's Bay. This is a program called Instant Zone, peak performance every day, and it's our pleasure, as always, to have in the hot seat Edmond Otis. G'day, Edmond. How are you?
Good morning, Ken. I'm good. How are you?
Edmond, you're a motivational coach and a motivational speaker.
Yep.
All that sort of stuff. Just remind our listeners, because now we are radio with pictures as well. Say g'day to YouTube,
God,
Edmond.
I can see that.
Yeah.
And we're talking about stress. We'll see how I perform.
Yeah, you're starting to stress already. I can see
a little bit of seeing if I can walk my talk.
The beads of sweat coming out of your brow.
No, not yet.
Remind our listeners what you do, Edmond.
I do a variety of things. My background is primarily sports psychology.
Yeah.
I used to work with a lot of clinical clients. I don't do so much. I do a lot of work around basically performance. How well do we do what we want to do when we want to do it? I work with athletes. I work with organizations. I work with students. I'm a senior lecturer at EIT in Sport and Health Science and the Master of Health Science. So I kind of round it out. And I guess my fundamental background, which occasionally sounds off to the left somewhere, is I'm a karate instructor. I've been doing traditional karate since I was 12, and it's kind of a mixture of modern psychology plus martial arts attitudes and plus getting on with it.
Now, just listening to what you're saying there, it sounds like you work with groups, but if an individual listening to this program said, "Oh, he's the sort of guy I need to talk to," could I just bold up and say, "G'day, Edmond, I need some help"? Would you do that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I work with a lot of individual clients. I try not to increase my load too much, but I do one-on-one work. If people are in the Hawke's Bay, we meet. If people are around New Zealand, or I have a lot of clients overseas in the U.S. and some athletes in Europe, we do it on, by internet. So I'm willing to work, and I like working with a variety of people, because basically I can't help feeling that even though there's a lot of differences, almost everybody's the same. We face the same stressors.
Absolutely. Are you a therapist or just a motivational coach?
In the U.S., I'm a licensed psychotherapist, which is an avenue of psychology. My training specifically in helping people achieve change.
Yeah.
So I'm a licensed clinician.
Right. Today we're going to talk about stress, and I think we all have a fair idea what stress might be, but from your point of view, what is stress?
I guess the simplest definition is stress is an absence of resources. In the last 10 or 15, maybe 20 years, we've been taught and looked at that we're under a tremendous amount of stress, which we are, and maybe we'll get time to talk about some of that, and we see it as a negative thing. The research I'm most interested in lately shows that people who are under stress but recognize stress as a useful component to achieving their goals actually have no negative effects.
Yeah.
If you feel like you're being tortured by stress or overwhelmed and you don't see a way out, it tends to raise your high blood pressure, raise your hypertension, increase heart disease. And so we see a lot of that.
Sure.
But at the same point, people who are under stress that recognize that they need to come up for an event or organize and coordinate their resources thrive under stress.
Yes, because we often think, we usually think of stress as a bad thing, but it can be a good thing.
Well, it's unavoidable.
Yeah.
It isn't a good thing or a bad thing. It just is. No one would do anything without stress. The only reason you got up in the morning today is because of stress. You have to get to work, or there was sun in your eyes, or you had to go to the toilet, or you're thirsty, or your back hurt. That's all stress. Okay, anything that motivates us to do something else. I sit in my chair. That's a result of stress.
Yeah, but we don't look at it as stress, do we? No one would think that getting out of bed in the morning is related to stress.
Right, exactly. It's related to reducing stress. Yeah. So the things that motivate us cause action. And what we're continually trying to do is to reduce that stress, so we come to what the pointy-head psychologists talk homeostasis. We want to be in a situation where we don't have stress. However, we're continually motivated to do things. So I see stress as a human attribute. I don't see it as positive or negative. However, I recognize that if we don't handle stress well, we really tend to crash and burn.
What we found here since we started doing our YouTube programs is, and I gave you the story before we came to air, and that is that what's going up to YouTube is what we do. It's going to be warts and all.
Yes.
Whereas what I'm putting on the radio, I'm going to take out all the gaps and all the ums and the ahs, and you're going to sound pretty slick.
Okay, and here it's just going to sound like the raw, what we actually are. There's that sweat right down here at the back of my neck.
But what we have found is that the people that we put to air like that, they actually lift their performance. They're almost like they're more prepared. It's like going live when I do the breakfast show. If I make a mistake, too bad. It's behind me. I don't think about it. I just keep going.
You just got to keep going.
Whereas by doing it pre-recording it, I think, yeah, I'm going to take that mistake out because I want to sound a bit better.
Yeah, but the term prepared is exaggeration. You didn't tell me you were doing this until about 30 seconds ago. So now prepared we are.
Next time you'll be better.
Yeah, and next time, just a little vanity, I'm going to figure out where the camera should be. But we'll see how it looks. I'm sure it'll be fine.
But okay, is this what we're doing right now? Like we said, we told you just before we came to where we're going to do. Was that good stress or bad stress from your point of view, or it didn't matter to you because you're a pro?
I assume it's good stress. I mean, I think it's an opportunity. It's a different situation, so it's somewhat stressful. If we crash and burn, I think that's a bad thing. I don't think that's going to happen. So I see it as good stress.
Yeah. Are you the sort of guy that thinks, too bad, it's done, it's gone, can't do anything about it?
Right.
Is that the way to look at things that happen in your life?
Most of the work I do tends to be a combination of voodoo and research. One of the things we know, and I do a lot of work around resilience, which is our ability to thrive under stress and to bounce back, is we know that people who tend to be resilient are people who tend to deal with stress well, tend to address problems in a certain way. Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of them do that naturally. Some of the work that I do is I try to help people learn to deal with these problems in a certain way. And so there's ways to approach challenges and approach difficulties that either work for you or against you. This experience, if something happens, what we know is we should learn from that experience, but the term learn from the experience implies that we're going to go forward.
Yeah.
Obsessing about experience doesn't help anybody. Yet some people have a challenge in cutting loose of something. There's this combination of being too lax and being too critical. When I talk to groups, obviously, and it's immediately recognizable, I'm from the U.S. My family and I moved here about 10 years ago, and we love it, and we're citizens, and you guys can't get rid of us now. But one of the things I figured out is there's two Kiwi phrases that we use all the time here that if you combine them, tell you almost everything you need to know about good mental health and good emotional health, but you got to combine them. And so for me, what I try to remember in one way or another is the two phrases are harden up and at the same time she'll be right.
Yeah.
You put those together, and harden up doesn't mean nothing bothers you. Harden up means you'll get through it, and if things are going bad, she'll be right means you'll also get through it. So I see both those things as an effort to cut yourself some slack. If there's one thing that people who deal with stress do well, I believe, is they're able to have high expectations of themselves, but at the same time, they're able to cut themselves slack. They're not so hard on themselves.
I sort of agree with you, 50% of what you just said there. That
it's better than I usually get.
When you say she'll be right, in the main it is because, if it's something simple and it happened yesterday or 5 years ago, you can't do anything about it. Right. And you more or less just have got to either let it go or address it and put it right.
Absolutely.
And if you can't put it right, well, just let it go because maybe the other person doesn't want you to put it right. But the other thing is that you said harden up. And when you look at, say, mental health issues in our society today, and someone says to you, come on, mate, harden up.
You got to put both of them together. And I often, it's a risk for me to say that, and I'm glad you bring that up, because I don't mean it in that way that things shouldn't bother you. Okay, to me, harden up is an aspect of she'll be right. Keep working at it, cut yourself some slack, be kind to yourself, give yourself a chance, and fundamentally reach out for help. And if you do that, to me, all of those are an aspect of harden up. Reaching out for help, to me, is an aspect of getting over myself. If I ask for some help and look for some help and gather some resources, things will be right, she'll be right. So I don't mean we should be all staunch. You look at statistics. The two groups that are most vulnerable to depression and suicide right now, especially in New Zealand, are teenagers, who end up feeling awfully alienated, and also, we got to watch out, middle-aged white males.
Yeah, that's us.
Yeah, well, I'm being kind with that. So you look at that. So, there's an aspect to harden up, which is not about isolating yourself. It's about recognizing, that, get over the vanity, and, everybody can make mistakes. And so I think of that a lot. For example, when I work with athletes, and that's probably my main focus group of high visibility, when I work with athletes work awful hard, but the best athletes, no matter how competitive they are, they give themselves the opportunity to make mistakes, to take risks. The nature of sport is you prepare yourself and then you make it up. You take risks and you face challenges, but you're willing to take chances. That means you have to be fairly resilient.
I wonder though, is being an athlete and being a Joe Blow citizen two different departments? Because I think someone who is an athlete and you're helping them with what's going through their head, you're trying to improve them so they can be better in themselves, and they would readily come to you and say, look, I've got this bit of a block and I can't get past it. Whereas Joe Blow, who's worried about his job or worried about his relationship, it's completely different, isn't it?
I got to tell you, I don't see it as any different at all.
But whereas the athlete's willingly going to come to you, and Joe Blow isn't going to come to you.
But the challenges are, the challenge is that if I'm close to something and I'm doing almost everything I can, it's just not working right, maybe I can use some assistance. When I work, I do a lot of resilience work in the high schools. We have a big program going on that's been in operation for about a year. And, I always talk about this, our most elite players, if you think in terms of athletes, or you think in terms of people who are successful, all have advisors. I think the All Blacks have 12 to 14 coaches. Okay, what that means is the best athletes in the world and the most successful team in the world recognize they need to reach out for help to improve their game. It's all mentoring. Now when we look at coaching, we've taken the idea out of sports and we see it in business. We see it in academics. So there's business coaches, there's success coaches, there's management coaches. So we use that term. And all it means is you get with somebody who's going to help you achieve your goals.
Yeah.
So I don't see it as fundamentally different. I just see it as different in the avenue you are.
Yeah. And what you say, and I've said this to you before as well, sounds great when you say it, and when we're reading it sounds great.
Yep.
But putting it into practice and actually realizing that we'll need the help of a professional like yourself, if we divorce ourselves, like we say, from the sports arena, when we've got all these things going through our heads, we've got problems, we don't even recognize what we are suffering and we need help.
Yeah.
Why don't we do that? Why don't we recognize that?
It's part of putting too much pressure on ourselves. It's part of recognizing that everybody thinks they should get it right all the time, that there's a script, it should sound easy. Sometimes people don't want to address the fact that they're having a difficult time. In my work with groups and also my work with individuals, I tend to break it down into 4 areas that if you work on these 4 areas and learn some skill in these 4 areas, you will do better. The first area is literally, how do you approach a problem? How do you think about the problem, and how do you plan out the solution to the problem? It's a cognitive construct. How do you think of the problem? People who are resilient and people who are good at stress think of problems noticeably differently than people who are not, and people who are overwhelmed with stress. The second is literally physically, what do you do with your stress? How do you resolve your stress, reduce your stress? And those are physical skills. The third is, and kind of combined with the fourth, is how well you communicate with others. What do you say to others? And then part of that is what you say to yourself. When you get those 4 things together, you improve your success rate tremendously.
Yeah.
I don't want to say it's a guarantee, but almost.
I was reading an article, I think it was this morning, that 1 in 10 Americans have mental issues.
Well, it's 1 in 10 everybody.
Yeah, well, okay.
Yeah.
That's a hell of a lot of people.
Or no.
That means in New Zealand, there's 400,000 people have issues that are probably stress-related. That's massive, isn't it?
Yes and no. That seems to be a fairly standard statistic. It doesn't mean that people aren't able to function with that. It means people have issues that are identified externally and are seeking treatment for, could seek treatment for. There's criteria around depression and anxiety. Everybody has a bad day sometime, but when you have an actual diagnosable situation regarding depression, it requires some help and some assistance. But 10% is about the standard. What the problem is, the trouble for me is, in the last 20 years, that number is increasing drastically for our young people. 10% doesn't bother me, maybe because I'm in the business. That's about right. Now, it doesn't mean that people have ongoing issues. Some people, 10% of the population will have some issue, maybe episodic. They have one issue of serious depression over a lifespan of 80 years. Some people have an ongoing issue. All of those things are manageable. The things that are most distressing for me is, for a variety of reasons, we could do 2 or 3 shows on this, is our young people are being identified as having a significantly higher percentage than that 10%. That's a problem. That's environmental.
Do we overrate it though? Like you said, some people might have one case of depression in their lives. They become part of this statistic that 1 in 10 has a problem. That statistic probably won't change, will it? But
Right,
you know, are we over-reporting it? I mean, is it as bad as what they're saying, or is it worse?
But again, 10% doesn't sound unreasonable to me. So a lot of it's interpretation
Yeah,
right
sure.
here. You know, 10% is significant. 10% of the population needs to address that. You know, the support system needs to do that. But that's pretty much the statistic of what it's always been. I think that's an aspect of human nature. Some people really have that. I think the question is, how do we address that? What do we do with that? Becomes significant.
I guess what I'm really saying with that question, though, is it as serious as what it's made out to be, or is some of it, oh, look, that can be fixed overnight almost? Is it as bad as what the statistics are saying?
Again, I don't see it, we're kind of at a crux here. I don't see it as that bad.
No.
I see it as 10%. Now, a percentage of that 10% have significant, profound problems. A percentage of that have more manageable problems. It covers, I mean, you know, a certain percentage of people, you know, have diabetes. A certain percentage of people have different issues. But within that 10%, we see the full range.
Yeah.
It isn't only, you know, the most severe cases, someone who needs to be hospitalized, but it's people who need care, who need self-care. People can do a lot on their own. You know, there's some things that people can do that significantly reduce the impact of that.
How do we know we're stressed? We get home at night, put our feet up, have a glass of orange juice, reflect on the day. How do we know if we've had a stressful day or not?
Well, the mistake is having the orange juice. Okay. Maybe, you know, I tend to, as we do more of these, you'll recognize, I only look at research that reaffirms what I think in general. But we know we're stressed if we can't put it away. We know we're stressed if we can't stop thinking about it. We know we're stressed frequently if it affects our sleep. We know we're stressed frequently if it affects our relationships. If we can't compartmentalize it, if the things we worry about during the day seep into every aspect of our existence, I would say that we're under a lot of stress that way. You know, we need to concentrate on things and worry about things and focus on things. One of the traits of human nature, and there's terms that I tend to use, and you mentioned this earlier, we either get to choose between front-load stress or rear-load stress. You know, front-load stress is you invest the energy you need to resolve the problem. Rear-load stress is you let it bother you and build up forever and ever, and you never address it.
Yeah.
People who tend to have the resources to invest in the problem and resolve it, reduce their stress. You know, if I have a dog and the dog keeps getting out of the fence, and so every 3 days I end up wandering around the neighborhood, that's rear-load stress. I just never. The easiest thing is fix the damn fence.
Yeah, that's right.
But sometimes that's a challenge. And sometimes people need help with that. But if you can't cut loose of your problems, you can't focus on something else, you can't compartmentalize them, you're taking too much of your own, and you're not doing the things you need to resolve them.
Again, you made it sound really easy. Fix the fence.
Fix the fence.
And if we are stressing about anything, why don't we just fix it?
Sometimes
if we did that, you'd be out of a job. But
well, sometimes we don't know what to do. But then, for example, if you look at stress, stress is frequently related to anxiety. People have different personalities, and sometimes just because we tend to have anxiety, we tend to think there's something wrong with us. In the U.S., I used to teach at the University of California. I was there for a long time, and I used to teach a class on personality. And I'd always lose half the class or alienate them. I'd get them right back, and I would keep telling people almost everything you need to know about personality you know from watching dogs. Dogs have different personalities. There's the little yappy dog, that's normal for him. There's the big Great Dane who's kind of slow. Everybody has a different personality. Some of us tend to be yappier. We need to get more exercise. Some of us tend to be distracted by bright lights. Maybe we need to get away from the computer and the internet a little bit and focus on one thing. Some of us tend to be a little more hostile. Maybe we need to learn some different skills. But it isn't pathology. Okay, it's only pathology or illness when it affects your ability to have the life that you want to have.
Yeah. We're just about running out of time.
What, already?
Yeah, if you just want to recap on what we've been talking about, that one, it's easy to become stressed.
Yes.
Not quite as easy to de-stress. I mean, even a guy like yourself, you're an expert in your field, I guess you get stressed.
Absolutely.
So what do you do?
But again, I want to correct that. It isn't only easy to become stressed. Stress is a normal aspect of life. Okay, if you see the stress as something that's useful, as a means of motivating you to resolve the problem, that becomes useful. That has no bad connotations. Okay, and all the research shows that. If you let the stress build up and overwhelm you and you never do anything about it and you just live a life of fear, you're worried about your own thoughts, then you have serious problems. But it's not the stress so much, it's how we interpret the stress, and B, what we do with that interpretation
Yeah, I just wonder if you could clarify something for us that you talked about at the beginning. You know, you said getting out of bed to go to the toilet, going to the fridge to get your milk for your cereal. These are all stress. Why are they stressful?
No. Stress, again, when we have the term stress, it doesn't necessarily mean something bad. The only reason we do things is to meet needs. Another interpretation of stress, you can call stress also motivation. Okay, it's just a need. Okay, that's all. Stress is a need. I need to relax a little bit. That's a need. I need to drink something. That's a need. But scientifically or clinically, the thing that motivates me to get up and go get a drink of water is thirst.
Yeah.
That thirst has created some stress, which I can eliminate by drinking water.
But the average person doesn't think of that as being stress at all. They think stress, oops, got problems upstairs, better go sort it out.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So just recapping on how we sort it out, I mean, if you're stressed, you probably go for a run or go and break some blocks or...
I don't break blocks.
What does the average guy do to relieve stress? Just that, get out and have a bit of a walk.
The simplest things you could do, there's some things you could do that have almost nothing to do with your problems. Almost the simplest solution to almost most of our problems, and I hate to say this because it is so simple, is simply exercise.
Yeah.
Look up online, get a trainer, just go to the gym. If you can hit your target heart rate, and there's a whole formula there, 3 to 5 times a week for 20 to 30 minutes, not only are you healthier, you noticeably reduce your stress. Physical exercise. One of the reasons we're under so much stress right now is we are not designed to work hard and sit on our butts all day long. Back in the day, if you did what I think of as real work, what you and I do is not real work.
No, it is not.
Right. But if we dig holes, if we chop down trees, if we build houses, if we build bridges, if we clear shrub, if we herd cattle, at the end of the day, we should go home, sit down, put our feet up and watch TV.
Yeah.
Right. However, if I sit in front of a computer all day, I worked really, really hard. I'm not discounting that. If I've been on the phone all day, if I've had meetings all day, I've worked really hard, but my body hasn't had any release. Okay, part of stress, negative stress, is an imbalance between what our bodies are doing and what our thinking is doing and what our emotions are doing. So if you sit around all day, do not go home and sit down. Go home and go for a walk for 20 minutes.
People like us who sit around all day, are we likely to be more stressed than the guy who is building bridges and building houses?
In general, yeah, it depends how you deal with it, but we know physiologically, aside from your circumstances, exercise physiologically reduces stress. You have less stress, less brain chemistry causing stress hormones, less breathing problems. So physical exercise, okay, is the #1 way of improving mental health and reducing stress. Almost all my clients, I request at some point, we got to do some exercise during the week. I don't do it with them, I do my own.
Yeah.
But a little bit of exercise every week is a godsend.
Just about done. Edmond, just remind our listeners, we want to come and talk to you about anything that we've talked about today or anything else. In fact, how do we do that?
You can find me online if you just look up Edmond, Edmond, Otis, Otis. There are a couple sources there. Easiest way is to call me, 021-275-0226.
And next time we'll maybe talk about obsessive thinking.
Oh, I like that.